our second last session for today before we get to Yalbilinia. Thank you all so much for being here today. It is really great. This session, we are joined by 4 of our alumni, who I'm very grateful to all of them for heeding my call to come along today. My thoughts about this session is that it's an opportunity for you guys as students to hear from some of our ex-students about kind of their path into study and where they are now, how they got there. And so I've got some questions, but I'm very happy for you guys to jump in with some questions. It really is an opportunity for you guys to ask things that you might want to know, because what you might want to know is probably different to what I might want to know. So the students that we have joining us today are Victoria Jordan, Sarah Coco, Carly Elwin, and Matthew Allen. Sarah, I might start with you if that's okay. If you just want to introduce yourself, tell us when you were at CSU and what you're up to now.
Thanks so much, Simone. I'm really excited to be here today. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great day of learning thus far. My name is Sarah Coco. I graduated with an LLB from Charles Sturt Uni in 2020. So I had a very fantastic experience studying at CSU, and certain that you're having the same. So really excited to be here today. Did you want me to talk a bit about what I do?
Yeah, tell us what you're doing now. Yeah.
I am a senior intermediary with the ACT intermediary program. And for those of you who haven't heard of intermediaries before, we are independent and impartial communication advisors. So we work with courts, lawyers, and police officers to ensure best possible evidence gathering, best possible communication in evidence gathering procedures such as police interview or questioning at court. And the way that we do that is by assessing vulnerable witnesses and their communication, and then tailoring communication recommendations to our stakeholders at police, lawyers and courts, so that the questioning or the processes that they're going to engage in the criminal justice system are understood by the person, and so that they can communicate at their best capacity when they're participating in court proceedings or police interview.
Thanks, Sarah. Next we'll go Victoria.
Okay, so I think I graduated in January 2021. It must be, I think. I'm working in Steel & Co in Bathurst. I'm working as a litigation lawyer, mostly commercial stuff, some estate litigation. So I've done 2 years, but I'm definitely not ready to get an unrestricted practicing certificate. I'm still learning a lot. I studied law. This is ironic. I wanted to go to Charles Sturt because it was local, but they didn't offer philosophy, but they did offer law. It was the second year they offered it, I think. So that's why I ended up doing it. I had no intention of becoming a lawyer. I had worked in disability advocacy, so I had sort of some background in that. But anyway, and how I ended up where I am, I did my PLT there, which was my intention. I didn't apply anywhere else. I just asked Ryan at Steel & Co if I could go there. And after I finished my PLT, I stayed on. But it's interesting that I thought I wanted to work for Ryan at Steel & Co based on the lectures he gave at CSU. But actually, I didn't enjoy the work at all with him. It was real estate stuff, conveyancing, estate planning. I didn't enjoy it at all, but I do enjoy litigation. It wasn't what I expected to do. I thought I'd do some more sort of community law orientated thing. And yeah, it's tough work. Like, waking up at 2 a.m. worrying whether you've got your orders in for court or, drafting letters over and over and over again in your head. It's not something I expected to have that sort of effect on me. So I certainly know why lawyers get paid a lot now, because it's not just the hour that they draft the letter, it's all the other stuff. Advice for other students: if you don't think you'll come out of this being a lawyer at all. You have no idea. You start work and you just don't have any idea at all. The paralegals have more idea than you do about what's going on and how things are done. And how to get the right job, no idea. But I do lots of different things. I work for Gemina I'm on their advisory board for their zero emissions 2050 policy. and I do work for Prime Minister and Cabinet in disability, the sort of not-for-profit stuff, giving advice on their disability policies. Yeah, different.
Thanks, Victoria. And Carly?
Hi, everybody. I'm just using this on my phone for the first time, so I feel a bit like a boomer trying to find out where all the buttons are. I feel like I'm a little bit of a poster child for CSU because I grew up in rural New South Wales, and I started at CSU way back when in 2016, wanting to be a police officer in the criminal justice bachelor's. And then as I sort of learned a little bit more about the system-based stuff around policing, I realized that it doesn't quite align with what I wanted to do. And I did a semester abroad with CSU in Canada, where a lot of people were doing their bachelor's of criminal justice as a pre-law bachelor. And I thought, well, if they can sort of do it, I can too. And it had never, ever crossed my mind before. And then I loved my law degree. I did it on the side of working in social services and traveling overseas. And then I finished my Bachelor's of Law in 2022. I did a master's in Costa Rica at a United Nations university doing international law and human rights. And now I've just scored a paralegal job actually with the Refugee Advice and Casework Service in Sydney. So that's sort of how I've ended up. None of that was planned. All of it's on the sort of run, but I love law, especially sort of what Claire was talking about before in terms of that human rights-based advocacy. And I feel like that's where my passion lies. And I love that I've found a field that equips me with tools to be able to do that on a day-to-day basis and get paid for it. And I thank CSU for that, because I never, ever, 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 ever would have thought I'd be in law. But yeah, that's how I've ended up here.
Yeah. Thanks, Carly. And Matt?
Well, I'm a bit like Carly. I went to uni to be a cop, and I pretty quickly decided that wasn't going to work out for me. So I shifted into law. I'm from Bathurst, so I was pretty happy to go to CSU. A lot of my mates were there. The rugby club was a lot of fun, so I was more than happy to spend a bit of time there. When I finished my degree, I finished in 2020, and then I had the distinct privilege of working with James Horsburgh at Mac and Mac. I think I can see James lurking in this chat, so I'm sure he'll pull me up if I say anything that's not true. But I did a stint there I was there for about 2.5 years, 2 years as an admitted solicitor, and then I think about 6 months before that doing my PLT with James. And then in about July last year, I shifted to the Commonwealth DPP in Sydney. So I've done mostly criminal law. I do all criminal law now. And I work in the human exploitation branch. So that's mostly child sex offenders that get caught in the Commonwealth law. So that's pretty much digital child abuse material, or Australian citizens who commit child sex offences overseas. And we're pretty busy. So that's what I find myself doing now. Yeah. I didn't really plan any of this to happen. In terms of being a lawyer or going to the Commonwealth, it's really all come about because I sent emails. I remember my job at the Commonwealth came about just because I threw a resume into a register of interest, and there you go. That's how it all happened.
Excellent. Thank you. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and feel free whoever would like to jump in first, what are some of the unexpected components of your job?
Well, from a Commonwealth perspective, being a prosecutor of the Commonwealth, this might surprise people, but dealing with victims as much as I have to do, and all the processes you have to go through when you're dealing with victims, it's quite an interesting experience. Most of my victims are children, and have been victims of some pretty nasty things. So that, just going through that whole process, dealing with them and their families has been quite eye-opening, I would say.
Thanks, Matt.
I might say that pardon me, that I'm not currently a practicing lawyer, but most people in an intermediary role are from allied health professions. So it's married really nicely with my previous studies in psychology. But my having studied law has been so very helpful in this role, and I didn't realise how many interactions I would have with police officers, lawyers and judicial officers around good communication and what that looks like in the criminal justice process. So that's been the level of interaction I've had has been really interesting, and that ability to make a hands-on practical difference.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Simone, may I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
Yes. Sarah, just there, I'm an ex New South Wales DPP. We had witness assistance officers. Is that the kind of thing that you do there in the ACT, or is it slightly different?
It's slightly different. I think New South Wales has their own scheme of intermediaries working in police interviews and in courts. No, we're a bit different from that. We are an inherently supportive role because we're supporting good communication, but we're completely impartial officers of the court, and we only, we're only focused in our role regarding communication. So we can't get into sort of advocacy and support officer roles, which the two will intersect together, and there's a space for both. And when the puzzle pieces come together nicely, it works really well. We're a very separate role. But thanks for your question.
So just as an aside on that, in New South Wales, it's been a pilot program in Sydney and Newcastle, I think. But yes, this year it's going to be rolled out to the whole of New South Wales. So it will be really interesting to see how that all works in practice.
Absolutely. Be interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
One thing that shocked me was just the amount of money people will spend on, fighting actions that should never have even started, let alone continued. And it's very difficult. So much of my work is on the principle of the matter, and it's it just doesn't make sense to me. But I think maybe as an older person, you see things more holistically than younger people. But it's as I say, it wasn't what I expected to do at all.
Victoria, I was listening to somebody else's lecture yesterday, and she said, when a client comes into my office and says, it's the principle of the thing, I know I'm in trouble.
And there's nothing you can do, 2 years later, you're still fighting about the money, and, it's cost as much as they're getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess, like, on the opposite side of that, working in a community legal centre is like the lack of money that is being pumped in to like refugee spaces or any sort of human rights community legal centres. And I think I went in from like high school thinking that, lawyers make a heap of money, and like that is the always going to be the case. Yet working in community legal centre in Sydney in a housing crisis, like watching solicitors that have been like senior solicitors with 10 plus years of practice experience having to move because they can't afford to live in an apartment anymore in the city. And like this, I think it sort of burst my bubble a little bit unexpectedly of what that looks like working in community legal centres as a lawyer.
But even in private practice, the pay of employed solicitors is not good. My 23-year-old daughter who manages a venue down in Sydney gets more money than I do. It's very poor pay. And I think there have been cases recently where the pay of solicitors, junior solicitors, was less than the minimum wage when you accounted for the pay. Simone would know about this, I think, where they had the case where they worked out the hours that the junior lawyers were doing, and it was less.
Was that in the DPP?
Yeah, it was to do with when they did the costings, they couldn't work out why there were so many hours, and they took it to Fair Work Australia. I think the court sent it to Fair Work Australia, and they found it was too low.
Yeah, I feel it may have been New South Wales DPP, but I'm not 100% sure.
but very, very low pay. Like I'm happy with what I get, but I work casual, and I get about $40 an hour. So that's, $30 an hour equivalent. I could go to Aldi and earn more than that. So, the employed solicitors, and I'm not underpaid at my work. Like, I don't consider it to be an issue, but you definitely don't walk into these highly paid jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I would act on a bit of a more positive note. One thing that I found that was very unexpected for me was how much I enjoy advocacy, going to court. I hated public speaking in high school, and I was terrible at it. And when I was admitted as a lawyer, I had that thought, I had that realization where I thought to myself, hang on, mate, you don't really like public speaking. That could be a bit of a problem. But after doing it for almost 3 years, I'm surprised almost every day how much fun it is going to court. When I was doing defense work, working with clients and stuff and helping navigate them through the court process, standing up for them in a courtroom, because literally that's what you do. And even as a prosecutor now, doing at the other side of the bar table, I'm even today, I'm still surprised how much fun I actually have doing that. So if you're a lawyer who likes criminal law and you think to yourself, oh, I don't really know if I'm going to enjoy going to the courtroom, that's just head noise. Ignore it, get in there and have a crack. And I reckon you'll eventually, once you get comfortable, you'll really enjoy it.
The adrenaline is high.
It's fun. It is. It's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's also very scary though when you have to go in front of the magistrate and you don't know what kind of mood they're going to be in. I think it might be easier with the higher courts.
Oh, that's true. And look, sometimes you do cop spray. I've copped some cracking judicial sprays in my time, but the more you get them, the more you realise it's not personal. It's just sometimes they're just not happy, and you've just got to cop it on the chin. And you'll come in next time. You'll come in. They'll be laughing, happy with you. It's just part of the ride.
I hate it. Absolutely hate going to court.
One of the things that. Sorry, go, Carly.
Go. Quickly, because I do feel like I added in, like I was so negative there, and thank you for having a positive, Matthew, because quick positive for me, unexpected, is just how diverse and welcoming law is. I didn't think that I would ever see myself in it in terms of being queer and being from the country, but the firm that I work for at the moment is one of the most diverse spaces I've ever been. So that's a quick positive from me.
The profession is very welcoming. In Bathurst, certainly, it was very cordial environment. And when I moved to Sydney, I was a bit concerned. I thought it might be a bit more cutthroat, but it's not. It's you walk into a courtroom and go meet up with a defense lawyer and stuff, and it's a very, very, most of the time, it's a very enjoyable chat. It's like talking to your mate down the pub before you actually go into court. And the other thing is too, if you hop on LinkedIn and you want to meet with a more experienced professional, you might want to go meet with a barrister and ask about that career path. If you shoot out messages on LinkedIn and ask people to go and have a coffee with you, just to have a chat about whatever it is they do, I've not been turned down yet, and I've probably met with about 20 people in the last few months, and they're also welcoming and generous with their time, and I think that's another positive about the profession.
But you're probably worth knowing, you see.
I don't know about that. Just a humble country bloke trying to make it in the big sun. But yeah, they're very warm. Everywhere I've been, if you need help, I remember there was one time in Bathurst where I was running a hearing and I was clearly forgetting to do something. I can't remember what it was, but the magistrate was hinting heavily that I'd stuffed something up. But she obviously couldn't tell me what it was. And so I just leaned across to the police prosecutor and I said, mate, what is it I'm supposed to do? Because I don't know, and I can tell him when to do something. And he just told me. He said, he whispered to me, you need to stand up, ask for this. This is the section. And so I did it. And I remember he could easily have turned to me and said, oh, I don't know, mate, your problem. But he just told me the answer. So I stood up with fake confidence and said, oh, you're right, no worries. Oh, can you do this? So I've had a lot of good experiences like that.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll open it up to if people would like to ask some questions now, just take yourselves off mute or type into the box if you're not able to take yourself off mute.
I might just throw a question out there. It's not to anyone specific, but I think Gregor might be able to help me. So I've just resigned from the police force. So I was a police officer for 12 years, focusing on the same kind of work that Matt just mentioned before. So a lot of digital evidence, child exploitation material, and cybercrime related matters. I've just enrolled, haven't started my first subject yet. So I've got the next 4 years ahead of me. Being in my mid 30s, can anyone kind of give some insight or advice on if at the end of this 4 years, become admitted, start working somewhere, what do you think that would kind of look like? Would it be right at the beginning, right at the bottom, bottom of the food chain, grabbing coffees for everyone? Or is it kind of easier as a professional or mature aged, workforce entrant?
Yeah,
If that kind of makes sense.
I'd like to answer that for you, Andrew, if you or I'd
Cool,
like
thank
to.
you.
So I'm 56. I had massive experience in various things, work health safety. I was in the army, I was a firefighter, worked as a disability advocate, I worked in neurophysiology as a scientist at Prince Henry Hospital in Prince Wales. So I had this really, really broad knowledge. And also in my first day as a trainee lawyer in PLT, I already knew how to show up for work on time. I already knew how to be respectful. I already knew how to communicate, how to write, all those things. So actually, I think it's an advantage to be older because you quickly progress in your career. You're not having to and be humble, I guess, too. Like, you come out of your law degree, you do your PLT, you think you're a gung-ho lawyer, you're going to be a complete prick to the first person you're negotiating with, probably, if you think you're something special. But I think as an older person, you've already worked out your role in life. So you're going to be a lot more collaborative and a lot less cocky about the job.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Do you want to do criminal law, Andrew? Is that where you think you'll head into?
Yeah, that's kind of the way that I'm thinking I'll go down. I guess I would like to sort of specialize in, criminal law, but specifically cybercrime related offences, so either technology enabled or just technology focused.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that you need to do is find yourself a good mentor out of uni. I was very lucky because James was very generous with his time, and I started regionally, which was a massive benefit because I was essentially running my own practice from my first day, with supervision, of course, but I didn't feel like I was at the bottom. I was going to court, I was doing family law stuff, I was doing sentences, mentions. I think after about 6 months, I was running my first hearing in the local court. It was pretty generous, and that sort of experience I've found has been quite unique. Now that I've moved to the city, a lot of my colleagues are a bit sort of taken back by that. The other thing is too, I would think about you could even start off somewhere like Legal Aid or the Aboriginal Legal Service, and in those situations, with your experience, you're not going to be anywhere near the bottom. You're going to be in the courtroom. You're going to be with clients, I would imagine, doing that sort of work. So I don't know where you're based, but I would encourage you to either start maybe regionally or somewhere else at one of those government-based firms, because my experience I never felt like I was at the bottom when I was working in Bathurst. I felt like I was very, very lucky with the amount of trust that I had from the partners at the firm I was at, and the opportunities I was given were, I didn't have the experience to do them, but I got to. And I think it's just about getting out there. If you get out there, you start networking. So I would start networking. I wouldn't wait till the end of your degree. I did practical. I worked as a volunteer at the Aboriginal Legal Service for about a year before I think it was my second or third year of uni, and I was emailing James at Macamac before I graduated. So I think if you make the effort to line those sort of things up, get out, meet with people. Like I said before, most people are very happy to meet up and talk to you, and they're quite honest. They won't blow up your tires. They'll be quite straightforward, and I think it's possible with your experience. There's no doubt you can find a role where you're not going to be. I'd be very surprised if you end up getting coffees on your first day. It's just about making the effort to you got to make the effort. criminal law is competitive. And if you sort of sit back and wait, you may end up in that situation. But if you're proactive, you get out, you meet with people, you'll find a good fit eventually.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I might. I did just have a little sleuth of your profile on LinkedIn, so I will send you a message, Matt, if that's all right.
Matt, that's what LinkedIn's for. I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. I encourage, if you don't have LinkedIn, you really should, because you can really, I've been really surprised if you shoot lawyers in Sydney where I work now a message, hey mate, can I have a coffee, just thinking about doing this with my career, just want some advice. I've had no one turn around and say no. And I mean that. So I encourage, if people want to message me on LinkedIn, I'm all for it.
I had let Gregor know that his mic seemed to be a bit noisy, and it was very noisy. So do you want to just speak, Gregor, into the computer? Is that what you're attempting to do?
Yeah, I'll try it without the headset.
That's good. That's great.
Work?
Yeah, that's very good.
All right.
Yeah.
So first of all, just on the topic of grumpy magistrates, being a magistrate, I can assure you that we're not always grumpy, and the ones in the ACT are generally less grumpy than the ones in New South Wales. So I can always recommend that you come and do some practice here. On the topic of cybercrime, and I stepped away to grab my cybercrime book from the shelf. New edition came out last month, I think it was, in late December. It's a really interesting specialisation, and there's a lot of law there developing, emerging, and so on. However, I'm not aware of any workplace where you could easily specialise only in cybercrime and in child exploitation cases and so on. Even in the prosecution services that I'm familiar with, the ACT and the Commonwealth DPP, there'd be a range of material or matters you'd have to be working across. And while some specialisation occurs, you really would be needing to do a lot more than that. And for example, in my job here as a magistrate, occasionally there's something that's vaguely cybercrime related, but they're few and far between. So I'm in the office today writing up another drink driving case with challenges to admissibility of evidence because police failed to announce body-worn camera usage and got admissions to somebody being a driver and then went on to screen him. That's the sort of the bread and butter work of criminal law. So I hope that doesn't discourage. There are certainly opportunities within the system to do interesting work in cybercrime, and there's sadly a lot of child exploitation cases and very challenging evidentiary and criminal law issues in there. But I'm not sure that would be something you could immediately specialise in as opposed to something you could get into down the track.
We've got about 10 minutes to go. If people have any more questions for our lovely panel members, feel free to jump in. Now's your time. I have a question for each of you. While we're waiting, I'll jump in. How many hours? I know, Victoria, you work part-time. So could you each tell me how many hours a week you work around about?
I, as a paralegal, work 35 hours a week. And I think that's also what the solicitors are contracted to as well, but they go so over that in terms of, I think it's probably more likely to be around in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I work part-time, but when I've had cases that needed more than that, I've done till 4 o'clock in the morning and then got up again at 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
It's relentless, and this goes on for 4 or 5 days on the trot. And then you get consent orders, and then you get a break, and then it kind of eases off. But yeah, look, it's different for me because I'm paid I'm paid hourly anyway.
Mhm.
So I mean, but I might come home and do another 4 or 5 hours in the evening. And if I know if I was a salaried solicitor, I would do that anyway.
Mhm.
And you know, the solicitors, the junior solicitors at work are always first in and last out.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth isn't too bad. It's pretty sort of 8 hours a day. It ebbs and flows. Like if you're in a trial, you're going to be putting the big ones in, and that's just part of the nature of the game. But generally, it's pretty good. I have some with something big's coming up. Like if there's like a quite a large matter that's into like charge certification or something like that. Maybe the day before we're going a bit longer, just making sure that everything's sorted out. Sometimes if there's a serious sentence in the Supreme Court or something, a late email from counsel might keep you there a bit longer. But overall, it's reasonably well balanced. And I found this similar when I was in Bathurst, but there were some times where the hours you get a bit long because you've just got to do the best you can for your client. But overall, I find it's when you enjoy it and when you feel like your work's making a difference. It doesn't, to me, it's never felt tolling in that way.
Thanks, Matt.
I have a question, if that's all right. Going into my 4th year of law and being quite young, I'm 22. I'm really wanting to get into criminal law. I'm currently a paralegal, and because I'm doing the double degree of criminal justice and law. How you perceived that first time in the courtroom? It's just making me very anxious, just that very first instance.
Oh, I was terrified. I was very lucky because my boss at the time, James, came up with me, and that made me feel a little bit better. But I remember walking about this courthouse, and I was thinking to myself, what have you done, Matthew? What are you about to do? It is, look, it's an intimidating arena, and it is. You're going to feel a little bit anxious, but eventually you get used to it. You find your legs. I do believe. Now I think it's a bit like a muscle. I think the more you go, you get a bit more. You get that confidence up to a healthy level. There are some lawyers I've seen who have way too much confidence and they look a little bit ridiculous. I think, but it's normal to feel anxious, and you'd be surprised when you ask a lot of barristers, like, how do you deal with nerves for court? They tell you that they get nervous every time they go, and they do it like, they run trials. That's their job. So it's normal to feel anxious. But as I said before, I did not like public speaking in high school, and I wasn't good at it. But eventually, if you keep going, you build that confidence up. You start to learn and what happens, and it's important to sort of get to learn your bench. So every magistrate and judge has a bit of a different approach. And once you're in one area for a period of time, you sort of get used to the approach. You know how they like things to be done, and that helps you a lot as well. But I think it's important as a young lawyer in criminal law is just take your court opportunities. It'll be stressful at the start, and it takes, you have some sleepless nights, but take it. Go up there, run hearings, do bail applications, do sentences. Yes, sometimes you're going to make a mistake. They're not going to go that well, but that's being a human. You learn, you get better, and just try and back yourself. Everyone starts off in the local court doing mentions, drink driving sentences. That's where we start. That's where I started, and you build from there. But you will, trust me. I know it's I've been in your situation where you think to yourself, "Oh God, how am I going to do this?" But just keep going and be patient, and you'll be surprised. You look back 2-3 years time from when you got admitted, and you'll think to yourself, it's incredible how comfortable-ish you eventually feel.
I think Hayley has a question.
I was just going to add for Tara's sake that or anyone else, if you do ever have the opportunity, even as a paralegal or a PLT student, to do a mention, to seek leave to appear, it's a great way to do it because the magistrate will know, you're a junior practicing. Often they'll know that later on as well. I do remember my first time going to court, and I had my little note, may it please the court, my own name, written down on a little piece of scrap of paper, and it was practicing, make sure I try to get it right. So everyone starts, at that first level, and you'll quickly become accustomed to it, like Matt said.
I think one of the hardest things because I started practicing when I was 23, one of the hardest things starting practice at that age is actually your clients having trust in you, because they're like, what do you know? You're straight out of high school. And actually, it's a conversation that James Horsburgh and I had one day, and his line to clients was, yes, I'm not far out of law school, but that means that all of the information that I've learned is very fresh in my brain, or words to that effect. And for me, it was a matter of that you could tell. Sometimes they'd look you up and down, like, what do you know? But if you were really confident in the way you spoke to your client and they knew that you knew your stuff, that pretty quickly alleviated oh, she's too young, she doesn't know anything. So for me, it wasn't so much the court side of things. Well, that was a different kettle of fish, but convincing clients. I had this client who, her dad came to her, and her mum had been dealing with me. That was fine. Her dad came to court and he looked me up and down as if to say, you do not belong here. And I had to put on this persona that was a wank, but I was like, I know I look young, but I'm very good at what I do. And he was like, oh, I know. But just that's not how I behave in real life. But I had to kind of do something to kind of stun him out of where he was at, to say, I've got your daughter. It's okay. We can do this. So those are some of the other things that you come across being a young lawyer. But I think by knowing your staff, that's actually the best thing for me that you can do, is to be really clear in your law and in your way you deliver it. Okay, well, I'm going to last minute. Do any of you guys have any advice you'd like to share with students that you haven't already shared this morning?
I just like to say that it seems a shame to me that all the schools are online now. There was a lot to be gained from showing up in person, I think.
Thanks, Victoria. I appreciate that feedback. Yeah. So we'd certainly miss it. I certainly miss it, and having that interaction with students on campus.
I guess for my advice would be, because I didn't really go in with that experience that the question was sort of directed to before, being younger and sort of having more of an academic background rather than having practical experience. I've only just sort of landed a paralegal job, and I graduated with my bachelor's in 2022. So it's sort of I'm catching up on the practical experience. And I remember being a bit disappointed in not even getting PLT positions, volunteer PLT positions, even having a master's degree, even having work experience in social services. But I found it's the classic old foot in the door situation. You will get a volunteer PLT position, and if you apply yourself in that volunteer position, then most likely it will lead to a paid role. And so I just encourage everybody, if they can, I know it's a very privileged position to be able to volunteer at places, even if it's just one day a week, volunteering somewhere. It's getting your foot in the door and having sort of that experience on the resume, because it does count a lot when you're looking at, getting a solicitor job, getting a paralegal job. It's sort of a very traditional work your way up if you're younger, I've found anyway.
Thanks, Carly.
I would just say get out there and back yourself. Get out and have a crack. No one's ever going to get angry at you for having a try, for doing your best, for doing something that you may not have enough experience for. Law, I found when I started, was very intimidating, but if you make the effort and you get out there and you network, get involved with, I think you can join the young lawyers stuff while you're still at uni. You get out there, you meet people, you have a chat. You never know what sort of role might come up. But when you are admitted, just get out there and have a crack. If you want to do criminal law, there's a lot of sort of white noise out there about, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Just do what you think is right. But get out there. If there's an opportunity to go to court, don't think to yourself, oh, I can't really do it. Just do it. Have a crack. Try your best. As long as you know in your heart, I've done everything. I honestly have done everything I could to do the best I can. Yeah, sometimes you lose. Yeah, sometimes your client gets sent to jail in front of his family. You've got to run into the registry and lodge a appeal and appeals bail. They're stressful days, but you learn from it. You'll feel better. You'll go home. You'll feel so good about yourself. Even if your client's sitting in prison, you learn from it. And we've all been there. The best barristers, the best criminal lawyers have at some stage been exactly where you'll be standing in the local court, trying to figure out the bail act, trying to figure out, I started off with mentions. Everything was written down, even my name. I don't know why I had to put my name on my notes, but I did. But if you just get out there, have a crack, and you'll be surprised how far you can go.
Thanks, Matt.
I think I'd like to echo Matt's sentiments about getting involved in things. I was involved in the Women's Lawyers Association and the ACT, and I found that incredibly useful to think about the different roles that people had and the different aspects of law they practiced in. And it gave me great ideas for where I might want to end up or where I don't want to end up. I think the use of mentors or having mentors, access to mentors, I had that at the ACT Human Rights Commission as I was studying law, and I found that absolutely invaluable. And I think, as Matt was sort of saying, sometimes things might not always go right, but that might be the same in workplaces. Sometimes there might be, you need time and different experiences to work out where you fit in and where your values align. And I think that really helps you find the place where you're passionate to go into, where you're passionate to do what you do. And I think that's important for long-term success and enjoyment as a lawyer.
And don't be afraid to try different roles. If you're into criminal law, I very much enjoy defense work. That's probably my passion. I don't overly love the prosecuting side of it, but I learn a lot from it. It's quite different, I find. It's a different way of thinking. So try and be a bit, I would encourage you to be flexible in your thinking. Don't be sort of rigid, even if you think to yourself, right, I want to be a defense barrister, I want to be this or whatever. Just remember, it's a bit of a journey to get there. So embrace the opportunities that come your way. Everything that you do in criminal law, you will learn something from. But don't be afraid. Even if you think to yourself, I don't really see myself as a prosecutor. If a good job opportunity comes up, even if it's just you pump out 12 months, go and do it, because you'll take something from it.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our panel members. I really am very grateful for the chat that we've had today, and thank you to everyone that's asked questions. We'll finish the panel there. The Yalby Linear session will start at 1 o'clock, so you've got a quick time to grab something to eat. For those students who are enrolled in Law 113, Law 216 and 311, there is a self-paced learning activity that's in your subject site that are linked to each of the sessions today that relate to your subject area. So please feel free to have a go at those, put your answers on the discussion forum or things that you've learned out of there. So the Yalby Linear will start at 1 o'clock, and I hope a lot of you can come along to that. Thank you all so much for your attendance so far. We'll stop the recording on this one now and see you back at 1.